Alright, so when we're looking at the petcock, this is the old petcock with no reserve. This is the petcock with reserve. Alright, so as I mentioned before, that you could make this work, but this would have to be elongated. And now you risk, when you cut this, that this insert becomes more, it becomes, first of all, larger, but this thing would also get heated up when you're cutting it out for this. So I think this would actually be a mistake to try to modify this to do it. So instead, I'm going to plug it with a plug with gasket. I think that is a better solution because that insert is going to be more of a problem to try to utilize that space. So you're either cutting it or you're taking it out completely. If you take it out completely, then the circumference of this being removed will be larger than this gasketed area of this particular petcock. I think it's better that we just start to put in the new holes for where the new petcock's going to go. Now, this could be done in two different places. You could put it on the outside, out here, but I think it would be better on the inside. If it is on the inside, the horn bracket is nearby, but I would rather have it on the inside because I think it's too vulnerable out here. Because you can see the handle is beyond, you see it, it's beyond the area of the tank where it would be safe. I think if you start riding this bike in the woods, it's not going to take much for something to grab a hold of this thing with it sticking out beyond the flush area of the tank. I think it would be better if it was slightly inside that outside edge of the tank. So that's the way I'm going to do it. The first thing I want to do is center it. I don't know if you could see it on camera, but there is a ridge right here. This area, all of this is all flat. As soon as you get beyond here, this tips this way. So this must be to the left of this ridge on the flat surface. The other thing I got to be careful is this gasket. You don't want this gasket on this little tiny indentation. It has to be before that. Otherwise it won't seal up properly. So I think putting it like this probably is the best way of doing it. See if I can get you a little bit better idea of what we're talking about here. So I think if we put this right here, that would probably add to the a better situation when it comes to a petcock. I think that's probably the best place to put it. So I'm going to make sure I'm not on this ridge. I'm going to put it, make sure it's flat, find the best place for it. Let's see, I think right there looks pretty good. Alright, so now we got a fairly defined area of where those screw holes are going to be. Now with those screw holes, the next thing that needs to be done is the inserts have to be put in. So the inserts on this are right here. These are 6mm brass inserts. Now I was looking at different tanks. Most of the tanks that have inserts are what they call blind. Blind means that they're internally capped. See that? They don't go all the way through into the tank. But on a petcock, it's not as vital. And the reason why I say that is it's not like this particular piece here and the pieces, the inserts up here are for panels, like the side radiator shrouds. Doesn't have radiator, but that's what they actually are, is the shrouds. Well, obviously, if you take off a radiator shroud, you don't want the tank leaking, right? So having a blind insert is important. But here, it's really no different than this gasketed petcock that came on it, whereas the hole has gas behind it, but the gasket and the nut stop it from coming out. Same thing with this. This piece here will have holes in here, but this whole thing is gasketed. So it's gasketed right up and sealed up against the tank. So that's not going to be an issue. I got to make a template though, and the template's going to be allow me to drill 2 1/4-inch holes right here. These holes for the petcock reserve and on are drilled straight through with an actual drill. However, these inserts are not drilled. They're actually melted directly into the tank itself, and they self-seal. All right. So the next thing I got to do is just measure these out and make sure that I drill these in the correct place. Alright, made a little template here. That's the petcock. Punch the holes. So I'm just going to drill a starter hole. Okay, right here is the screw holes would go here, so the inserts go at this location. These two are the hash marks for the tubes for the on and reserve tubes that go through. Well, I'm just going to put a mark here so the drill bit doesn't wobble and drift. I'm going to use a smaller bit to get these things in here. Wow. Okay, so maybe 5/16 is the right size. 5/16 it is. Okay, right there. Modification here with the utility knife. Okay, so now this is all set. Gasket. I could use a little bit of a tweak right here. Now I am going to make a permanent template, so this would be a little faster. I think that would be helpful. Just to speed it up when I do it for, if I do it for anybody else, you know. Okay, so I think I got that taken care of now. Plug with gasket, and then the modification to the tank. Now I know there's scraps inside here. We'll get rid of that. Okay. Alright, on a different note, I was mentioning before on the previous videos that I was going to swap out the carburetor and try a different carb. So I took the nibby off, which is a 27 millimeter if I remember right here, and I was attempting to put on a 30 millimeter accelerator carb instead. The accelerator carb is slightly taller than this by about 10 millimeters. Plus, instead of the drain output being at 90 degrees to the carburetor, that one, but the one on that carb sticks straight down. So that was a problem. Now I could have finagled it, but I really didn't want to hack it. So I did some research on some exhaust manifold. I mean, some intake manifolds instead. This is the original, but it's actually about 10 millimeters too short. Like I said, I could have made it work, but I would have had to either notch the fins on the motor or cut the drain, cut like 5 to 10 millimeters off of it. And even if I did that, because it sticks down, the rubber on the hose that would have went out would have contacted the motor, and I probably would have had another whole set of problems, so I didn't want to do that. So what I was looking for is something similar to the stock one, but just a little taller. Well, I couldn't find exactly this, and you can see that, you see how this is offset? This is slightly back further than this. See that? Right here. So I was looking for an offset. This one is way off. It's actually too tall. It's not big enough in diameter. 22 millimeter, I think, instead of 24, if I remember right. 20 millimeter versus 25. So I didn't want to use this even if it worked, even if I could get it to fit, because it really would restrict a lot of the airflow, especially since the carburetor is no longer a 27 or a 26, it's a 30. So I really did want to have the wider opening. So what I did was, is on the third one that the second one rather that I bought, I managed to fit it in without any modification, which is really good news for anybody else who wants to do this. You see, this one is offset. It goes up, but it turns that way. So it ends up pushing the carburetor out of center, which actually works to the benefit, because now you can see that the screw-on slide would go here, and the cable for the accelerator pump would go here, which gives it a lot of clearance on both sides. The pod filter, I'm not a fan of pod filters because they just don't have the filtering when it comes to the fine particles. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to put like either a foam filter on top of this or a sock, not a standard foot sock. I'm talking about like a air filter sock, something very fine, just to make sure it gets the fine particles of dust. It lends the choke to be in a much better place, because on the Nibby, not only is it an enrichment knob that's over here, but when this thing is centered, it's like, it's really hard to get it. It's really difficult to do it by feel too. Anyway, so you can see that there's plenty of clearance here now. This was impossibly on top of the fins when I didn't use this intake manifold, but because the intake manifold turns it off center, it pushes this over this way. This is tight, but it does work, and I just did a slight, I flattened one side of it with a hammer just lightly to get it in there. I am going to reroute these wires though, because these wires normally go right in line with this filter, but there is some slack. The other thing I'm doing is, you see this ground wire, this normally would be attached to here, but I'm going to pull this back, I'm going to route it down here, and I'm going to connect it to right here, that instead. Now I'm going to put the rest of this together. I'm going to also be working on the grip warmers. I got the 16 tooth sprocket. I don't have a 17, so we're just going to have to go with the 16 and be done with it. As I mentioned before, the chain adjusters really are a terrible design. These are chain adjusters. Ironically, these things are brand new, and they came in a package of this Kawasaki KDX KLX series. It's pretty weird how these chain adjusters came in something that was designed for a KDX or KLX, because neither one of these bikes has this type of chain adjuster. The chain adjusters on those bikes are snail type adjusters, which are much better than this, especially for an off-road bike, not a motocross bike. But anyway, since I knew for sure that I wouldn't be using these on the KDX, because the KDX doesn't use these types, I'm going to use them here. Now, I mentioned earlier that these things really should be larger than they are, and this should be threaded, and it's not. So this whole thing just slides in there, which is a really dumb design. So now you got to use 2 lock nuts or jam nuts by putting that in, and then this basically butts up against the swing arm, and as you turn this out you can lock or jam this nut into this nut, and that'll keep it at the right spacing. I'm not a fan of this, but I'm not going to go through hell trying to modify it. I really would like to have a different type of chain adjuster, but for now I'll just put these on, and maybe later I can maybe invest in a little bit of time to make snail adjusters instead. Alright, let's start off by swapping out this sprocket. I just hope that the chain is long enough. That's the one thing I am concerned about. I would have really liked to try a 17, but I'm going to just go with a 16. Hopefully this carburetor will work out. It was really nice. I thought I was going to end up having to machine something or fabricate some kind of special spacer on the intake manifold to get it to fit. It turns out that it actually fits exactly the way it is. And when I dry fitted it, before I actually screwed it down and you know, fastened it with bolts, I really didn't think it was going to fit. And why is this so hard to get off? Jeez. Yeah, so I'm really happy that that this ended up working out. Okay. Take this off. Could have did this by the rear sprocket. Maybe I should have, but it would have gave me a little bit more play in all of this. A little bit more slack in the chain, because instead of making the sprocket bigger in the back, I would actually be making it smaller. Probably would have been a better choice, but the front sprockets are always much cheaper though, because they're so much smaller. And this works out. I don't know. It depends. You know, I really debated on what am I actually going to do? Is it worth making stuff for these bikes? Well, I think it is, but maybe not this particular model. I would rather have a model that I can prove can be a real contender in terms of it being better for performance oriented. Like, this is not one of those bikes, in my opinion, now that I've had it for over a year. I don't think this is a bike that is worth like spending a lot of money on, like swapping out engines. If I'm going to do that, I might as well just get another bike. I don't think that's a good choice, you know. Alright, I'm going to try just putting these nuts on this particular way. See if this works better. It really does make me want to permanently weld a nut on here, or better, thread this this hole in the swing arm. I could weld a nut on there, but it would I would get more range in terms of, you know, how much slack I can get out of the chain. If I can't get enough of slack in this existing chain, I'm going to have to actually add a link or two, which I really don't want to do. But look at, I wanted to point out this too. See this? Look at these nuts are super tight right now. There's not a nut on the back. They bolt right into the cast hub. But look at this. That's not good. There's another thing that kind of bugs me about the mentality of the way they do things. I can't stand it. There's no need for that. It's just as easy to do it right than to do it wrong. I'm gonna wait. I was gonna say I was gonna put grease on the. I was gonna put some grease on it, but I think I'm gonna hold off on that. One thing at a time. I'll make sure everything works and lines up. Like I said, I might not be able to do this. I might need more. I might need more slack in the chain. Don't think I can do this. I think it's going to be too... I don't know if I could do this. I don't know if I got enough slack here. Yeah, I don't have enough slack. Try this, but this isn't going to work really either. Well, you know, to be honest, these things are not really designed to let's see, axle. They're not really designed to hold the axle. They're just designed to initially push it back. Once you push it back and you tighten the the axle, it's going to the axle is what holds it in place, the tightness of the axle. So I'm going to try taking off these jam nuts and see what I get, but what a pain in the butt. If they just geared the bike right from the beginning, I mean, everybody agrees that first gear on these bikes is basically useless. Wow, there you go. Alright, let's put the nut back on, see if this is possible without jam nuts. Those of you who don't know, there's going to be notches. There's going to be notches right here. And this axle, the end of this axle spacer, or the chain adjuster block, the axle block, it should be lined up on one of these notches or between one of the notches. And of course, you got to get it even on the other side. So, but there has to be enough attention on the nut, the axle itself, so that when you move these things, it stays put, so you can get the chance to adjust the other side. So I'm going to snug it up a bit. Alright, that should be enough. That's not quite tight. It's tight enough. Should give us some friction to work with here. I don't want to go too tight because that's not good either. Well, that should be alright, but we'll have to see when the suspension's compressed. Alright, so what I'm doing is I'm looking at this, if you can see this. Axle block lined up with the second to last notch. It's like dead set in the center of that second notch, this one being the first. So that's the second, and that's what I want to do on the opposite side. So let's go over there. Okay, so that looks pretty good. That's right on the, this axle block is lining right up with the center of the second notch, just like on the other side. Just to make sure, I always kick the back tire, the back wheel, into the bike. Make sure it's seated. Let's take a check, tighten this up. Okay. Whatever. See, if I had the jam nut, that wouldn't be flopping around, but the truth is it's not doing anything anyway because the axle's tight where it is. I probably will readdress this. I just want to make sure that the gearing will work. Alright, I never checked the spacing of a swing arm for chain tension with a caliper before, but what do we got? 1768. Yep, 1763. Good enough. By routing the wire on the other side, see this wire, this ground wire to the battery went this way and down. But by the time it went all over here, it was really in the way of the pod filter. So if I go back, run it under the cross member and ground it this way, it keeps it out of the way completely. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll mount it here. This is the original place it was grounded to anyway. Just rerouted this, and then I'll tie this back up. I got to get this out of the way, but you can see there's a lot of clearance here as long as I can tuck all this away. There's clearance for the slide and the throttle cable, and then there's enough of clearance on the other side to hook up the accelerator pump. And the choke is way better as far as accessibility goes. Now this cable, this choke was actually set up for a cable choke, and it had a spring in here that kept it constantly in the closed position, because when you push the cable, if you had a cable up here on the bars, that's how it would work. But I'm not going to add that because, I mean, for the amount of times you use the choke, you know, just during startup when it's cold, it's not worth doing all that. So I just took the parts off of the stock carb and just made it so that it works with just a lever and no cable. And I took the bracket off. There was a bracket here that held the cable coming down here from this angle, and it connected here. But I think this is better. At least it is for my purpose. And then the fuel intake is here. I got new fuel line because the fuel, all the lines on this bike, all the hoses are just not good quality. The bike's only a year old, and most of them are, like, this is already getting really hard, and some of them are actually cracking already. So they don't make good quality rubber. So let's reroute this cable now. So I don't need to take off the chain guard. I'm going to put that back. Replacing the resistor wire with a true, you know, ceramic resistor is going to be a far better solution than that cheap resistor wire, which is so incredibly thin. I'm sure that's what broke on the last one. All the connections to the switch were soldered and weatherproofed, so I think we're going to be in much better shape than I was before. And you know what I'm basically trying to do is just kind of bulletproof everything, so that it's not such a cheesy kind of thing. You know what I mean? I want to have it so that we don't have to spend a ton of money on stuff that actually lasts. Of course it's going to cost a little bit more than the bargain basement junk, but but it's, you know, by taking the best and eliminating the worst of every product, I think we could have a better solution for a lot of the things that we all want. Not that everybody wants grip warmers, but I do think that grip warmers would be, it's a really nice add-on. I mean, I had it on all my KDXs and my XRs, so I think it's totally worth having. I'm going to put this this strap back on these wires, because this is fine. This is the starter wire. I'm just going to let that sit there. It's sitting there nice and neat anyway. But I disconnected that, and I'm going to disconnected it rather from the rest of the bundle, the starter wire, and instead I'm going to just make it so that these will stay put right here. I mean, like I said, I'm not a big fan of the whole pod filter thing because they tend to let a lot of fine debris by, but it does fit in there pretty nice. And this offset intake is huge. I sourced this directly from China, and if this thing obviously works with this bike, so it should work at every bike, you know, every model of this bike, so we should be good. And this will give you the option to have these higher performance accelerator pump. Hopefully this works, but I think it will. All the tests of injecting fuel directly into the carburetor with a mister definitely worked. So I think it'll work. It is 30 millimeters, actually quite big for a 150cc bike, but it should do the trick. Alright, so here's the cable. We've got the slide, we got the accelerator pump cable, and of course we've got the throttle side of it. So I'm going to try to route this. This is way longer than I want it, but I can't find a cable smaller than this. And I really probably should design or come up with a solution to be able to cut these cables and remake them up with the lead ends on them and get it, because it's going to be a lot longer than I want it, but it's more of a test. Alright, so I'm going to slide in properly. Okay. Let's see. Am I routing this? I know the tank comes down and hits these 2 points right here. I can see that. But I'll have to test it to see the best way to route this. I guess I could try routing it under here. Oh no, not there. I think here. Alright, see if I can get you a better view. Alright, so one of these nuts has to go and clamp down. And that's the other thing too. I noticed that these cables, and I've heard of this before, but they're right at the edge of being fully adjusted all the way out, which is not good. So I'm going to have to do something like this. Put this in, and then use the other nut to clamp down on it. See if I can get you a better view. You can see that it's in there, but there's a lot of, I don't like the way that you don't have that much control, and it's the way that they make the cable. I really don't understand what is up with these Chinese manufacturers. Like, do they ever actually try like using their own product? It doesn't seem it. You can see that it's connected. The cable runs through right through here and is connected. You know, you can see the little area there where the where it goes through. And then this right here is like, see the slack right there? This cable should be much more tighter than that, because it's almost at its absolute max. I'm going to have to snug down this nut and the nut underneath right here to make sure it's super tight. But there's not a lot of room for error there. I'm going to have to run this, and this cable is longer than I want it, but I'm going to run it probably here, through here, up into here, and then to the throttle cable itself, or the throttle assembly, all right? So if I pull on the throttle cable, that's the accelerator pump moving. I just hope it's adjusted where it needs to be, because if it isn't, I'm going to have to make some mods. Either the bracket has to be added to or bent in a different way, or the cable has to be shortened. I'm going to get the fuel tank and see if it clears everything over here. We'll see how that goes, because I'm worried about this area here. This is going to have to be cinched down. Probably going this way. Well, let's get the fuel tank and check it out. Yeah, it looks pretty good actually. Nothing, it's not hitting at all, because this thing is mounted with this center bolt here. So it looks good. I'm going to run this, I guess, through here and then up and over. See how that goes. Oh, look at that. The petcock with reserve. Imagine that. Look at that. Jeez, it's pretty long. Oh, this thing comes... Oh, cool. I don't need that. This thing will go right in here. Alright, I'm going to get you closer over here, but let me just get this started. Alright, I'm going to take the... this is a Nibby throttle assembly with the pulley, which is a much... It really is a much nicer pulley assembly with the cover. Actually, I'm going to put this in first. Lay that in like that. Pulley goes in like this. Wow, that's a hard pull. Holy crap. That might be a problem. I got the grips on order. They should be here tomorrow. This is for the insulator for the grip warmers so that they don't heat up the bar. Because I have tried a lot of different methods of using insulation and it just doesn't, it's not the same as the throttle side, because the throttle's got that complete tube. So this is, it's sort of like a throttle tube. It just doesn't have the actual pivot point. And it's on the bar really well. So this gives you the same insulation and isolation as the throttle side. So this should make the two grip warmers very even in terms of heating. And the fact that I have a ceramic resistor to replace the cheap wire resistor, I think is a good thing. It moves with the littlest bit of movement, which is exactly what you want. So every time I grab a handful of throttle, it should pump a little bit of fuel into the intake. And that hopefully will stop that horrendous hesitation that drives me nuts. You know, it doesn't seem that bad when you're riding it just farting around, but when you're pushing it and I'm stuffing it into berms and I need that throttle response, it's just not there.